Hi, families. Here we are live again for week 3 of our Intentional Parenting Online Summit. I have with me Tony and Nicole Davis today. I hope you have your pen and your paper ready because this family is a dynamic family. There will be plenty of notes that you might want to take. Mine ready to go. I want to introduce Tony and Nicole, who have been married for 29 years. They are advocates for strong families. They've raised sons who are fulfilling their purpose within their professions and gifts. So, without further ado, I want to give them an opportunity to introduce themselves to you and tell us a little bit about your organization called Empower to Engage.
Yes. Hello. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you, Precious. We are really excited to be here, aren't we, babe?
Yes, we are.
We've really been looking forward to this. And we have an organization called Empower to Engage. And through that organization, the vision of it is to really transform relational dynamics in our culture. And we start with that in the family. And the mission of that is to provide education and training, any consulting services that we can to families and organizations in the areas of marriage, parenting, and leadership, because we know those are the core areas that make up any organization, and it always starts in the home. So through that, with our coaching, we can work with people individually for personal development, with couples who are married, who are considering marriage. We call it pre-engagement as opposed to premarital, because you need to make some decisions before you decide that you even want to think about getting married. So we do that, as well as the leadership development, working with organizations, primarily churches. And that's a conversation we could talk about at another time, because I have a whole nother project that deals with developing leaders for conflicts within organizations that happen, and the primary focus is the church. So that's just a little bit about what we do.
But you also asked to tell us a little bit about us. So as you said, Precious, we've been married for 29 years. We have 2 adult sons. So in this topic, intentional parenting is right in our wheelhouse. But when we decided to have children, and as we raised them, we figured that we had to be intentional about their development every step of the way. And we know that it's going to be hard. And we knew it takes a lot of guts, really. It takes some intestinal fortitude to be a parent. As a matter of fact, one of our books, Parenting Done Right is Hard Work, but it's worth it, is actually a slogan is actually a saying that was given to us by the children's godmother when we were just talking about certain things that we were having to navigate through being young parents. And we know that it takes some intentionality to get your desired results.
And I can say specifically, because I remember when you said that, it made me think about what happened. I was a stay-at-home mom. So we met in the military, but I grew up with a term you may be familiar, some of the audience may be familiar, as a latchkey kid. I was an only child for the first 12 and a half years of my life. And I just remember coming home to an empty house as an only child. And even though, I don't know the specifics of what was going on a lot with the dynamics at that time, I remember how it made me feel. And it was a feeling that I knew I didn't want my children to experience, whenever that was going to be, if I was going to have children, that I wanted to be there. I wanted them to be able to come into a home where there was life when they entered the doors. And so it was during a period, the boys were in elementary. And it was, do you continue working or being at home, or do you get a job? Because we really needed.
We needed some money at that point.
We really needed.
I wasn't making enough, because, and just even backing up a little bit about ourselves, right? So when we met in the military, as Nicole said, and when I went into the military, I took advantage of the educational programs that they had, and I was on a great path. I was on track to receive my undergraduate degree in only 3 years being in the military, and I was so unwise to open my mouth and talk about that good news. And then my superiors saw that I was on that great track, and they stopped letting me go to school. So when I left the military, I did not have my degree. And as a result, it made it difficult for me to get the kind of employment I wanted initially coming out of the military. Now, since then, I've been able to obtain a JD, a law degree, and an MBA, and all the degrees you can want sitting right here at this table. But it was a long, hard process to get there. And And as a result, some of the income that came into the house as a result of not having those degrees, we talked about, well, maybe do we become a two income household at that time? But then it's like, well, hold on, wait a minute. If I go to work and I run the risk of forfeiting everything I'm trying to build in a home, because, as Nicole said, I want to have this lively home, this nurturing home for my children. I don't want to abdicate that responsibility to someone else. And she was a latchkey kid. I was a latchkey kid as well. I remember coming home, walking across a very busy thoroughfare in here in Baltimore City, and just going into my house by myself. I had an older brother, but he wasn't there yet, and that was normal life to me. And we didn't want that to be normal life for our children. So we had some hard decisions to make, especially when it came to finances in raising our children, and what that would mean, what the impact would be if we decided to get some additional income in the house.
Right. And we were both working on our degrees. We were taking turns. So
Yeah.
we had a plan, but many times during your planning, things happen. And there were situations that we didn't consider, that we didn't think would happen. Like, for one, we moved into an area where we thought they could go to the public schools. Well, then once we got in the neighborhood, we realized, okay, the public schools aren't so great. So now what do we do?
Right.
Well, that was an expense we had not considered in the planning process.
Private school.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so now when we're trying to make that decision about how do we get through this very difficult time, having wise counsel, and we'll talk more about that later, but having wise counsel as we were trying to navigate being new parents, being young parents, one of the things that we were told is parenting done right is hard work. And that you only get one chance to do this.
One chance to raise your children.
So we really had to think long and hard about what did we want the result and at what cost. And so together we made the decision that we'll just dig our heels in, dig deep, and work through it. And so I stayed home. I was able to stay home.
And
thank
you know
God.
what? And I'm gonna tell you, Precious, and just even with that being said, I'm gonna tell you, even before I went to law school, and you said at what cost,
Mm-hmm.
there were even certain jobs that I was looking at that could have even provided more income. And you said, "Babe, I really don't want you to take that job," because you would say, if you were to take that job and it would put this kind of demand on your time, at what cost? Because
Mm-hmm.
you are very involved in your children's lives. But if you do this, you won't be able to be. So I even had to weekday even sacrifices, even as we were looking at, well, how do we get more money in the household?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, so incredible just learning about you two with that introduction. So many nuggets right there, and you telling your story about your marriage and raising your sons. Remind us, how old are your sons today?
27, and in a couple of weeks will be 23.
Awesome. Great. And I wanted you to share that because for me as a parent, I have my 13-year-old son and I have my 8-year-old daughter. And there are many parents who are joining us today who are in the thrust of parenting right now. And I call this parenting today pandemic parenting, which is slightly different because right now we as parents, we are with our children 24/7. Almost 365 if we get to an entire year of homeschooling our own children, needing to be mom and dad while sometimes maintaining our careers for some of us, and even more stressful for those of us who need to continue to work and function well at work and at home at the same time. And I think what's really nice, the reason why I wanted to have this conversation about relationship building is because I think that you all are an example of raising your sons in an exemplary way. There's no such thing as an expert parent, but I tell you, I want to give you that degree along with because it's impressive just to hear the results as you talked about earlier, and just hearing the intentionality that you used in order to get your family exactly where you envisioned your family to be. I've had a lot of outside conversations that some of our listeners have not been privy to, but I think that'll come out as we continue this discussion. So in leading into one of the first questions that I would like to ask you, if you were able to give us one secret sauce, what is it?
What's your one secret sauce?
I don't. I think that question is kind of limiting, Precious. And I'm going to tell you why, because I think there are a lot of nuggets that they kind of all intermarry, right? But I think, but you asked the question, what one secret sauce? I'm going to try to answer your question. I think the title of your summit is probably the secret sauce, intentional. And being very intentional was the foundation, and then you let things spring forth from that. So when you are intentional, you have to be unwavering, and you have to be committed to what you set out, understanding that challenges will come, and that you understand them for what they are, that they're just challenges that will eventually pass if you handle them properly. I mean, let's be honest about it. If you don't handle them properly, they may overtake you and cause a lot of problems. But if you know what your goals are, and for those who are married, I would say one of the key things with that intentionality is being on the same page, having constant communication about being on the same page. And also, like, even as we shared, even with the financial struggles that we had early in our marriage, we had to come back to the fundamentals. Okay, why are we doing this? Why are we making the decisions that we've made? And sometimes we have to bring each other back. And for the single parent, what I would say is, with your intentionality, do whatever you can to get a support system that can help you, because nobody can do this on their own. It can be done, but to be more effective, you need to that it takes a village to raise a child. Really be intentional about your village. That's another area where you can be intentional. Is intentional about your village, intentional about who you're receiving counsel from, intentional about who's helping you, and also intentional about who's helping your children. And so with that intentionality, that's why I said it's kind of hard. So I'm not going to stray too much, but with that intentionality, you have to have some discernment as well, because you have to say yes to this and no to that. I guess that's my one
Oh,
nugget.
you loaded that one down.
Okay, so
I would add,
I agree. He cheated, didn't
he
he?
did. He did. You know, like, you know what, see,
To all the many
right.
pieces.
I was trying not to cheat. That's why I gave it to one, but I just gave you one of the little tentacles that comes out of being intentional. And then I stopped talking.
So I would add to that, unified. And that has been, I would say, that's a huge challenge. It's challenging when you're married, and it's doubly challenging if you and your partner or the other parent are not together. And I say that because, I was in a home where my father was in and out of the house, but they were not unified. First of all, they were not married. They did not want the same things. And so me seeing that, I knew, okay, if and when I have children, this is what I want us to want together. Like, I wanted us to be a family that went to church together, a family that prayed together, like not just something to quote, but something to live. That was really important to me. I wanted us to both be interested in how our children were doing, what they needed, because I didn't feel that when I was growing up. So I tell you, and I don't know how it is that what I felt has stayed with me. I've not forgotten. And so I knew there are certain things that need to be in place, and we need to be on the same page with that. So Tony and I, thank God, we have been unified, not always in the how, but in the what. And so we knew that we wanted our children to be integral, God-fearing, hardworking, productive members of society, especially having two black men children. Mm-hmm. We wanted them to be productive. And so how do we do that? We start with being unified. And they needed to see that unity. And then they needed to experience it in how it is that we dealt with discipline, how it is that we dealt with education, hard work, you name it, that we were always on the same side. It was us against them. That they were very clear. You cannot come to mom to try to get something over dad, and vice versa. So being unified, I would say, is the word I would choose, the secret sauce.
Wow. My parents were equally that way, and I think it benefited us a lot just to have that united front and the commonality that I was sure that my parents wanted to raise us right, in the way that they spoke the same language and imparted the same wisdom and principles into each of us as their children. And I want to segue a little bit, though, into how we can acknowledge the differences in our children and how you're able to build a strong relationship with each child. So can you talk a little bit about raising your sons and maybe the difference in characteristics or approach with raising each of them?
Yeah,
I guess I could start, and I'll start with one of the things that we talk about often here, meaning between Nicole and me, is that when you have this parent title, that there are some other things that are germane to that as well. So a lot of times we say, well, what does it mean to be a parent? What does it mean to be an active parent, an involved parent, a caring parent, and all those other kind of things? And it always comes back to the word parent. But we know that there's some other synonyms that we have to look at, attach to ourselves as we do this thing called parenting. And I can tell you one of those things is, and I think Nicole will probably want to talk about this maybe sometime throughout, but student. You have to become a student, even though you have children, like in your case, you have children 13 and 8. So we would assume that they are students, that unless they were those child prodigies already graduated college at 13, that they're probably some kind of student, right? And we attach that to our children. But the reality is, when you are a parent, you have to become, you still have to be a student, and you have to be a student of your child. And so you asked a question about how do you acknowledge the differences, and that's key. That the first thing you have to acknowledge is that each child is a unique individual, and they may have some characteristics that may remind them of uncle, mom, dad, mom, whoever the case may be, grandpa, somebody in the family. You look just like him, you act just like him, but the reality is that they are a unique individual. So you have to study your children and be inquisitive about the things that interest them. And then here's a key part of that. It's especially when you're talking about from the perspective of building relationships, because I can understand all these things, but now that I have this understanding, what do we do? And I'm gonna tell you, even as you're talking about our organization, we have a tagline that's called the application of this acquired knowledge, right? So the how-tos and how to apply this acquired knowledge. So how do I apply this acquired knowledge now that I have it? So now I understand my children are different. Okay, great. Now what do I do? So here's what you have to do: study your children, and then and once you understand what they have and what God has put in them, you have to create an environment to cultivate that and build it and become involved in their world. It's not just studying them and knowing that they have this gift or they have this talent or that they have this interest, but now how do I get involved in their world at an age-appropriate level to help cultivate that?
I think one of the other things that you say a lot that I think is really important is that our children are not blank slates. Like, they don't arrive here for us to then tell them what we think they should become. In the studying of them, it is looking at what are their propensities towards, what do they seem to have a natural inclination. Like, we have one who is sports and he likes to work with his hands. He was into robotics and he liked to draw. And then the other one, he was into theater and wanting to be a director and studying scripts and learning lines and wanting to be a manager, like managing people in the second grade, creating businesses. So people would try to give us the credit.
This kid created a business in the 4th grade, and he had unpaid interns that he made sign employment contracts, and he hired them and fired them based on their work ethic. And we didn't find this out until we went to a luncheon at the school. Mm-hmm. This is what he was doing, So how do you cultivate it? And they were giving us all this credit. We didn't even know he was doing it.
But what we did do when we saw these interests in them, we put them in drama programs, or we put them in athletics and sports. And then sometimes they were both doing the same things, and we saw one excelled in it and the other didn't. One may have liked music and the other didn't. So we didn't make them both continue. One played saxophone. We thought the other would play piano. He didn't want to. So we took him out. So it's not just, well, you signed up, you're going to stick with this. Well, did they really sign up, or did we sign them up? So, you just really have to be honest as parents. And I want to answer Nicola's question, because I think it ties into this. How do we have this conversation? We have always sat down with our kids along the way. One, we would be asking them, so how do you think we're doing as parents? What do you like about us? What do you don't like about us?
Yes, and we had that.
We would have those conversations. Another might be, well, you know what? Look, we are new at this. We're just now trying to figure this out, so we're really going to have to work together. We thought that was the right thing to do. We realized that it's not.
Yeah, and I can tell you, so, and just to give you a little more detail with that, with the what do you like about us and what do you not like about us, or what do you like about what we've done and how we've done it. And sometimes and that would give us an opportunity to explain our rationale for why we are doing what we're doing. Sometimes they had an agreement with it and they understood even at an age appropriate level. And in other instances, they didn't, and they would even tell us, you know what? Well, I understand that you have to discipline me and it's your job to guide me and direct me, but you didn't have to be so mean about it. You could have been a little nicer in your tone. And it's like, you know what? You're right. So next time this comes up, I'm going to watch my tone and I'm not going to be so bossy towards you. So we actually let them help because they're the show that used to come on TV, kids are people too, right? So, and my desire wasn't to just be right. My desire was to build and mold my children. So if the way I'm talking to you is not working and it's just causing you to have resentment and disappointment, then maybe I need to back it up. But by the same token, my oldest son may say, well, gosh, you've been a lot nicer to him at this age than you were at me.
Right.
And we say, hey, can you cut us some slack? We've never had a 13-year-old before.
Right.
So, so by the time he was 9 and you're 13, you gave us practice so we could actually be better with him as a 9-year-old. So that we actually have those kind of conversations with our children.
Now we could go on. You just let us know, Precious.
Mindful of the time.
Right. I know you have questions. And I think I can just add to that. Did we lose Precious?
I'm here. Sorry about that.
Okay.
I'm taking it all in. I'm writing notes, jotting things down. So forgive my delay. It's just so good. I think
Precious,
I picked up. Mm-hmm.
And let me just add this in because I know you talk about like even in the you call this the pandemic era or the COVID era of parenting. And especially with schooling. let me just bring this up. This is a good time because we're talking about like the development of our kids and their interests. And I can tell you, both of our children had interest in acting. Like my youngest son, the one who we thought was going to follow, he was actually in the last episode of The Wire. And then when he was in that, we had to say, oh, he said, I don't like it. So he wanted to go in a different direction. And we had to shift too. We didn't keep saying, well, acting. He said, no, I want directing and producing. So, okay, whatever. My oldest son, who had this interest in robots, it's like, well, he had interest in robots, but get this. He struggled with math. He got good grades in math, but it didn't come as easy to him as it did some of the other people who you would think were like engineering inclined, right? So one of the things that his teacher actually said to us, and this was in the 5th grade, she said, look, I understand his that he doesn't get it as fast as other students. Would you mind if I send him home some additional homework? And by sending him additional homework, that meant additional work for us to oversee. But I can tell you, say, well, my kid may not necessarily be the strongest at math, but that same child now is an Ivy League graduate. So just because you may say, well, man, my child may not be excelling here, or it may take some extra work, put in the extra work because it could yield some great results at the end if you're willing to do it, even in this pandemic era.
And I'll add one more thing.
Go ahead.
Okay. And this is still going back to Nicola's question because I think it was a really good one. The other thing that we often said to our children is we have a huge responsibility. Like we wanted them to the degree that they could understand that the decisions we were making was because we felt we were being accountable to God, who is the center of all that we do. We are Christians. And so the Bible is our manuscript, our manual,
our instruction manual,
our guide for life. And so we would say to them, whatever it is that we do or don't do with you, we're going to have to give an answer to God about how it is that we stewarded over this huge responsibility that he's given us to be your parents and to guide you. And we want to do that well. And in order to do that well, there are certain things that we just cannot let you get away with because it won't be advantageous to you and it's dereliction of duty for us. So this is why you cannot go or you are going to have to do X, Y, and Z because what you did is not acceptable. We cannot allow that. And so we did that and we talked to them like that and we treated them that way because we were preparing them for a future with an expectation that they would go off and become independent thinkers. They need to know how to negotiate. Like there would be times we would tell them no, and if it was something they felt like was unfair, we would want them to try to negotiate. Like tell us why you think you should have it. Because we want them to be leaders, not followers. And if you feel or think a certain way, be willing to stand for that. Know what your convictions are and your values, but that was learned at home through communication with us.
And it also taught them to argue their point respectfully as well.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. When I sat in psychology class, one of my professors asked the question, who all has family meetings? And I reluctantly raised my hand, but I realized that, there were other classmates, slowly but surely raising their hands as well. And when she completed the question, she said, for those of you who had family meetings, you are going to be really successful because you have learned how to communicate with those who are in authority. And stats tell us that those who were in family meetings would do much better in the workplace than those who may have not had that structure at home. So this was something that I have learned to embrace, that my parents were trying to teach us all of the skills that you were talking about, the leadership, the negotiation skills, the ability to provide the feedback. A follow-up question was, well, how many of you actually questioned your parents at the family meeting? Which, really speaks to the open communication that you have talked about already. But one of the things that I would like to hear more about is, how did you build trust with your sons, and when did you know that you fully had their trust, that they were willing to come to you authentically with their questions, even if it was a tough question or a tough situation?
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things, a common question that most parents ask their kids is, so how was your day? Or what did you do today in school? A lot of times that's a one sentence answer from the kids, right? It's either,
how was your day?
Fine. What did you do? Nothing. Math, or, something real menial. They'll make it seem like it was nothing. And so we told them, we need you to paint pictures for us because we weren't there. So when you tell us about your day, we're really interested. So we want you to walk us through. And initially we had to ask them questions like, well, how was math? Or what did you think of that new teacher? Or how did the first day go after you guys came back from break? Or, whatever it was, we showed a genuine interest in their lives, in their friends. Like Tony is awesome with remembering names. So he knows both the boys' friends' names, like people he may have met only once or twice. The kids may be explaining something or describing something that's happening, and Tony be like, oh, you talking about Emily from the soccer team? And they'd be like, yeah. So showing that genuine interest in your children, no matter what it is that they're doing, because their problems are real to them, whatever they're excited about is real to them. And we need to get with them with whatever it is that they're going through, experiencing the ups and the downs. And so by being with them in those moments, that's how you build trust. It's relational. It's the day in and the day out. It's the doing homework together all in the same room. It's the helping them building projects and showing a real interest in, making sure it's the best. That you're getting quality materials and things that show that you value what's important to them, or making things a competition for them to know what it means to excel and to put forth your best effort, and then having rewards and things that they can get for their effort. So we've always wanted to make them feel important as people,
as individuals as well. And I'm going to just dive in a little deeper with that. And it goes to one of the other titles that you have when you're a parent, and it's called partnership. Because you asked about how do you build that trust, and as Nicole said, one of the things that we let our kids know, we didn't necessarily give them this word that, hey, we're your partner in this thing called life, but they understood, as we said, this parenting role is more of a stewardship role. We're going to help partner with you for you to become the individual that God has intended you to be. So they understood. And sometimes they understood, even if they didn't always agree, that what we were doing was partnering with them for them to be whatever they wanted to be. And how did we build that trust? We got into their worlds, their individual worlds. I mean, and if you say you want to act, then I'm going to help you become an actor. And we will talk about all the things that go along with it. That's how my son was able to navigate and even learn more than just acting. He was, okay, this is what the director does, and this is what the producer does. Oh, they make all the money. I want to go on this. I want to go this vertical. Or my other son, he had so many interests in, okay, let me create opportunities for you to do that. So you can trust me because you know that as we've been talking about your life, we're talking about things that are going to make you successful. And I'm not really, like I said, you're not a tablet writer. You're not a blank slate. I'm not trying to write my ideas on you. I'm trying to understand who God has made you to be, reach inside that, pull it out, and it's expose you as much as possible. So even the decisions we were making were always had the undertone of what's best for you. And what's best for you, it may not necessarily be best for me or best for your mom or best for your brother. It's what's best for you. And I'm going to do whatever I can to expose you so that you can continue to evolve as you gain more knowledge. So I think that's how we understood where the trust would be. I mean, and then we created a safe environment where they could express their ideas. I mean, even something as simple as like watching television. Now, granted, in my house, because we were kind of like we were a little disciplinary in here because we were military, but our kids learned how to function in it. Monday through Thursday, there was no TV in my house for them. They had a job. We had a job. They had a job. Their job was to go to school and get good grades. And because they were involved in extracurricular activities, they really didn't have a lot of time to watch TV anyway. But Friday, Saturday, Sunday, they could conceivably watch TV if they had time. But even as they watched television, we would even ask questions about, okay, well, tell me about the relationship dynamics of the people on this show, even if it's a Disney show. Tell me what you think they're going to do next. You know, granted, some of that's because my children were involved in acting and they liked acting, so it made the conversations easier. But we talked about certain things and we asked their opinions to see what their thought process was. And we gave them confidence, once again, even in addition to expressing themselves about how we were parenting, but confidence to express their opinion in a whole lot of other areas as well. And I think that's one of the things that we did to help build the trust.
Mm-hmm. We would learn the kids' songs and sing the songs, you know, whatever shows were important to them. We would sit and watch. Now, did we care about watching these shows? No. Did we want to act out the different things that we saw? No. But we did because we love our children.
And it was important to them. And then thank God things that we used to VHS tape our shows so we can watch them later because it was either our show or their show, right? So we had our stuff came second. And then thank God things like DVR and all that kind of stuff would eventually come on or whatever. But anyway.
So I'm hearing a lot of structure and a lot of sacrifice.
Yes.
And I often say in my household, you know, with that structure, it's almost, I tell my husband, sometimes you got to punish yourself just to be there for your children. You know, you have to go without, you know, not that it's actual punishment. The rewards are just so much stronger and better for each and every person in the household. But, you know, you have to sacrifice sometimes the things that you were looking forward to as an adult, right? Like we couldn't wait for adulthood so we could just do what it is that we wanted to do. And lo and behold, we have children and we find out that, you know, none of this is about what I want to do. And so I've learned to also appreciate my own parents' sacrifice. And I always say for families, my grandmother had 10 children on my mother's side and my father's side. So both of my grandmothers, 10 children. And I always say, how many ever children you have given of yourself that many times, you know. So it's just wonderful to think of the tremendous sacrifice that we actually go through to raise our families and to raise them well and to do the very best that we can possibly do. So I appreciate my parents, and I also appreciate you all and the example that you are sharing with us today. And I just want to ask if there's anything else that you would like to share before we close this live session that we're on today.
Well, she's giving us plenty of time, isn't she?
Yes, she is.
I do want to say, though, to what you just said, when we become parents, if we're completely honest with ourselves, none of us really think about what it's going to take to become a parent. God forbid you have a special needs child, because then that takes it to a whole another level, the amount of sacrifice that you have to give in order to care for your child. But being intentional in parenting, whether it's a decision that you make before you have the child or it's one that you are having to make today, because every day is a fresh start. You get a chance to do this over every day. It first starts with a conversation, especially if this isn't something that you've been doing with your children, that you do have the sit down conversation and say, you know what, I realize we need to make some changes. Whether you are a couple or a single parent, that, you know, I need to do some things differently because I want to provide more for you to help you in preparation for where you're going next. Children as well as adults, we always appreciate someone being honest and someone willing to apologize, admitting their mistakes, and then showing us through their actions that they are committed to the change just as much as they want us to change. So in becoming a parent, because you don't think about that, I don't think it became as real to me until I was in undergrad getting my degree in social work, when I was learning about human development and what a child needs and what's happening in those different phases of life. And then you realize, wow, this is serious business. This is not just about doing what I saw at home or not doing what I saw, because that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to go in the right direction. You may not do some things, but you're still not implementing the kinds of things to have the outcome that you would hope for your children. So being a student, as Tony talked about earlier, like really being willing to read books, being willing to be coached, being willing to change, being willing to admit that you don't have it all, you don't know it all. Those are the beginning steps to help you become the parent that is in a better position to give your children what they need. Because after all, they are free moral agents, meaning they're going to make up their own minds, but it won't be because we didn't do our part. We have to determine to do our part, and our part is to expose them to as much as we can. And that's why Tony and I do this work together, because how often do you see a husband and a wife together talking about raising their children, or what it takes to have a successful or happy marriage, or to get through the challenges of marriage? Neither one of our backgrounds would have lent itself to the outcome that we have. I didn't grow up in the church.
I grew up in the church, but I didn't grow up well in the church.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, I was really on my way to being one of those statistics when you become an adult and just go off and do your own thing. But even when I was in the church, very ineffective to me. I had a lot of questions that I could never get answers to, and I was really disappointed that I was in an environment where they thought it was so cute that this little boy had these questions, but I was really frustrated that no one would really had answers to this little boy's questions. You know, so kind of caused me to look at what they were doing as like, okay, you guys are just going through some ritualistic, legalistic rituals, and then you're still not living anything. So. But that's it. But even with the fathers at home, I mean, you know, sometimes, you know, it's tough. We both, like I said, both work in single parent households, with the single parent being the mother. And I mean, when I would see my father, it was normally, oh, your father's in a drug rehab. Now you and your brother have to go see him. And I'm like, well, why are we going to go see him there? And why couldn't we go see him before we went to the drug rehab? Nicole's daddy was the one who, if we lived in the same town, he would probably be the one selling the drugs to my dad, right? So just the dynamics there was just like, you know, we were really on track to be the traditional statistics, but we both were intentional enough to say, you know what, we're going to do things differently, and even with that intentionality, it wasn't easy. I mean, it was a process, and we didn't just say, oh, okay, we're going to do things differently, and everything is hunky dory roses. And no, it took a lot of work, and it's still taking a lot of work.
Right.
I mean,
right, because we've never had children the ages that we have now, and we're still parenting. It's a different kind of parenting, but yet still we still are.
And I'm gonna tell you, and one of those other synonyms that we have is teacher, right? Mm-hmm. So, but in looking at it from all levels of development, and you're looking at it whether you're young or teenage, or even now if you have adults, you're still a teacher. You have to pass on information and skill. But especially for those who may have younger children, one of the things I would say is be very cognizant on the methods that you use to pass along that information and skill. You know, as you know, going back to the Bible, Professor says, "I'm here to build you up, not to tear you down." And a lot of times we'll use our authority and just say, "Because I said so." Because I said so. I know you heard it in your household. I heard it in my household. And even though it may have caused us to do certain things, it was an instruction that didn't really garner respect, because I said, do it because I said so.
Right.
It's true, but it didn't really help build the bonds, right? So you're talking about building the bonds. Even like one of the things we in our book, Parenting Done Right is Hard Work, but it's worth it. The subtitle is a practical guide to winning to give you practical parenting tips to win the battle for your children. So just being really a parental bully doesn't help you win that battle. It doesn't help you build those bonds. So look at the methods that you use, but be freely. But anything that my children know, if I know it and it's age appropriate, especially, but now they're both age appropriate. But back then, if it was age appropriate, if I knew it, I was going to share it with you. And I wasn't going to hold anything back because I wasn't going to put any limitations on you unless you showed me that I should put some kind of limitation on you. But then, and if I saw the limitation, now it's my job to come in as almost as a teacher, as a coach, to build you up, especially if I thought it was something that it was really material that you should have as a man child or as a young man or a future man who's going to become the age of majority, right? I need to make sure that you're not deficient in this area. So I'm going to teach you if I see that you have the deficiency. But even with that being said, I can't browbeat you because all I'm going to do is push you away. So I know I'm being redundant, but the method that you use to teach your children is extremely important, especially as you're looking at being intentional and you're building relationships.
So what we did is we put some notes together, and this will help you to kind of synthesize some of the things that we've said. So 3 ways to create a healthy relationship with your children. You can look at it from these perspectives. 1, interact with your children daily. And so we've given you some ideas of what that looks like. You know what your children have to do. You know what you have to do, but you make time for the things that matter to them. So,
yes, because you said make time, and as we know, that's how you spell love when you're talking about parenting. Love is spelled
T-I-M-E.
That's how you spell love as a parent, right?
Correct.
And as a spouse too, but
right. Now, marriage, that's another subject. Okay. The second one would be change your parenting style as your children get older. That is really important. And when it comes to what single parents go through, and I just have a special place in my heart for single parents because you carry a load that is not what God intended. And whether it's something that is out of your control or not, if you find yourself where you are the sole provider for your children, we know that the extra load that you carry, we cannot overlook that. And our prayers go out to you, knowing that you have to carry that by yourself. But at the same time, because one of the things that I remember growing up, helping my mother, I was made an adult child, meaning I had responsibilities well before I should have. And in fact, that's one of the things that we made sure that we didn't do with our sons because they're almost 4 years apart. I never made my older son watch our younger son without his permission. I would ask him, do you mind? And as he got older and was driving, do you mind taking your brother to so-and-so place? Because I wanted to respect his time. It wasn't just that I'm the mom and you do what I say.
And then look, I'm the mom, I'm the dad, you do what I say. And as a matter of fact, you don't have a car, this is our car, you're going to do what we tell you.
Right, and if you want to use the car, you're going to do. No, we didn't do that.
We could have.
We could have. So I say that, change your parenting style as your children get older because at certain stages, they need more responsibility, they need more independence, and they also need to get away from you. Like you're not a couple for moms. If you have sons, these are not your husband tight. Like they're not standing in the place of a husband. They are not co-parenting. Our sons and our daughters are not co-parenting with us. And it's hard, but this is something you have to be intentional about.
Especially
allowing
when you have multiple children and you need
allowing your children to be children. Or working it out together, like if your older children are helping you, that they get some type of incentive for doing that. Yes, we are a team. We would say it all the time. We all live here. We work as a team. Everybody has responsibilities here, or everybody has to help out and pitch in. But you have to really be careful when you move your children into that role of parenting. So that's a little tidbit on that. And then the third would be seek help.
And I'm going to tell you, and that's really important because not only does it kind of fracture relationship between the parent and child, but it can also fracture relationship between the siblings as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're looking at bonds. How do I build these bonds, and how do I build this trust?
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, you're going to be off the scene, or you're going to want them to function as I don't know what word am I looking for, as a normal, healthy, thriving unit. But we'll see it all the time. The brothers and sisters, they can't get along. But a lot of times it could be because of things that happened in the house when they were children, and it wasn't that they're just so different. A lot of times it could be because I had to watch you, and now I resent you.
Right.
You know, so you want to look at the long-term impact of what the responsibility you're putting on your children as you're trying to navigate this difficult life because the father of the children is not there.
Right. Or the mom may not be there, because that happens too. And the dad could be raising them.
Mm-hmm.
The third thing is seek help from others when needed. And I know, a lot of times we feel like if we are having to ask for help, it may mean to us that we're not capable, or we're inadequate in some way, or we're weak, or any of the things that may come to our minds. But the strength is in asking for help. That's where the real wisdom. I realize I can't do this by myself. I need the village. And if we say that it takes a village, then you really have to let people in to assist you, as Tony was talking earlier about needing someone to come in and tutor. If sometimes
stop. Forget about, because you said the fact that you need help, you may feel inadequate. And I remember the time when it was back to school night. I think our oldest, Jay, his name is Jay. He was in the 4th or 5th grade, and you go to all the classes and look at all the teachers. And I mean, here I am, I'm an adult. I think I was in law school at the time, right? And I remember sitting in his science class, and they were teaching earth science. And I thought to myself, I said, wow, he has to take this. If I was sitting in this class right now in this elementary school, I would probably fail this class, because the material was so boring. And I just gave him, and I never expressed to him how boring I thought it was, because he had to go sit through it for that semester, right? But it's like, I wouldn't be adequate enough to even help him with any of that stuff. So and just realize, you know what, I am not adequate in all areas. I mean, and so I guess what we're really saying is sometimes you have to just get over yourself. And just, you know what, I can't do it all. And look, I ain't all that, whatever you need to tell yourself. And it's like, I need some help. And then, so now that takes the pressure off of you. Look, I remember my mom would always say, when I wanted her to be all that, she would say, and I don't know how it always applied, but she would say, I only have 2 hands, right? I only have 2 hands, whatever that meant, right? Look, I only have 2 hands. I didn't ask you about your hands. I asked you about such and such. But anyway, you just know I can't do it all. So just relieve yourself from that pressure of having to be all of that. And then, but the pressure that I guess if you're going to call it pressure is, okay, for those areas where I'm not adequate, how do I get the resources to help my child?
Right. And for us, even though we work together, you still need, because we say the definition of an expert.
Well, a definition of an expert, so here's what I learned. And I learned the definition of an expert unintentionally. This was in 1983. I'm watching the Baltimore Orioles baseball game. And at that time, the Orioles had a young baseball player playing shortstop, third base at the time, or shortstop. I don't know what he was. His name was Cal Ripken Jr., Hall of Famer for those of you who may follow sports. And they were talking about how young Cal, who was only in his 2nd year of the Baltimore Orioles, so I'm like 12, 13 years old at the time, right? I don't know, whatever the case may be, 14, whatever. I don't know how, 1983. So anyway, 13 years old. So anyway, I am watching this, and they were talking about how Reggie Jackson, who only played for the Orioles 1 or 2 years, had said some things to Cal Ripken Jr. as he was a child. And the reason Reggie had access to Cal is because Cal's father was a longtime coach of the team. And Cal's dad actually said, Reggie Jackson said some things to him that sunk into Cal and Reggie. But the dad was like, I don't know why I didn't sink in. I've been telling him that his whole life. And I'm sitting up here listening to this on TV as a teenager, child, whatever I am. And it's like, wow, he listened to Reggie Jackson, but he didn't listen to his dad. And they say, yeah, sometimes, when somebody else tells you something, you'll just get it. And that always stuck with me, that the definition of an expert is sometimes just simply somebody else. So what we actually did intentionally with our children, with their godparents, we would say, hey, John, we need you to pick up the children, and this is what we need you to tell them. We told them this, and this. So we just need you to pick them up for the afternoon or whatever, take them out to dinner, go do whatever you're going to do, and just really reemphasize this point. And
because we know they'll listen to you.
They'll get it. And so we can either take the approach of, hey, you're going to listen, you're going to get it, and you're going to get it from me, or am I just going to put you in an environment where you can get it?
Right. And so that means, especially as with single moms, we wear the banner, or moms wear the banner that, I'm mom and dad. While that sounds noble and nice, it's not true, because the things that a man can give both a young woman and a young man is not the same as what a woman can give. And that's when you really understand who God has made us to be, what our gifts and abilities are, and how we, what's the word I want to use? How we complement one another. Like both of what we have to give is very necessary for the full development of a healthy individual. That's why it takes a man and a woman to make a child. All of the parts go together. And so when we tell ourselves that we don't need that or it doesn't take all that, then we're deceiving ourselves, because yes, it does. And sometimes it's not even us, the two of us. It may be another woman or another man that have to impart those same things that they need from men and women. So we have to embrace that. And I think that's a great place for us to start in helping us to build these relationships, instead of us being offended when our son or daughter come and tell us that some other man or woman or teacher has said something and they want to hold on to that. Well, learn a little more about it. Right, embrace it. Talk to that coach or that parent.
I've been telling you the same thing.
And you can partner with them.
What did they say that I didn't say?
You can partner with them, and so it's all in perspective. You know, you got to realize that we're all working together to accomplish the same things, and we really can support one another in that if we allow others to help us do the heavy lifting on this. Now, with that, of course, you have to do your due diligence. You need to know who these people are.
As we talked about earlier,
right. You got to know who these people are. You got to have open communication with your children. You got to pay attention to your children's interactions with these other people, whether they're family, friends, people at the school. It doesn't matter. That's another part about being intentional, even with the relationships, and that there is an open door where your children are concerned, that they know they can come and tell you something, and you're not necessarily going to take their word immediately, because sometimes, you know, our kids didn't turn in that assignment. But you're going to do your due diligence to ask the questions to see what you need to do next in order to be an advocate on their behalf, or to support whatever needs to happen that they didn't do or didn't follow through on. So that also takes an extra effort. So those are the three things that we say to do to have healthy interactions with your children. Healthy relationships. 1, interact with your children daily.
2,
change your parenting style as your children get older.
3,
and then seek help from others when needed. So in addition to that, what else we put together, and Precious, you just let me know when you want us. Okay, so one of the things we were talking about earlier is, you know, when you think of the word parent, the first thing that you think about being is a provider. Like, we know it is important for us to provide. What does that mean? We're going to put the roof over your head. We're going to feed you.
Roof over the head, food on the table.
Right. That is our basic, that's our duty as a parent. But we just want to encourage you or challenge you to think broader in what that word can mean. And so Tony has been giving some of these terms as we've been talking, but I'm going to ask you to give us a few more and highlight the ones that you said already.
I don't know. I think we talked about being a student of your child.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about being a teacher of your children.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about being a partner with your children. But I think one of the big things too is also being the example.
Okay.
Because when you talked about how we knew that this stewardship, you talked about being a steward as well. You know, you're a steward and that's a provider. But with this stewardship responsibility is also being an example. And I can tell you one of the things so we met in the military, and our oldest son was born while we were in the military. And I'll just give this example of an example that actually kind of switched our view on a lot of different things, because growing up in a single parent household, and just at least in my community, and the woman I married, it was in her community as well. You grew up, you said, you know, when I turn 18, I'm getting out of here, right? I mean, that was just the attitude. We didn't know how right or wrong it was. It just was, right? And you just had to go do your own thing. And as a matter of fact, and then parents like, hey, my parental responsibility cease here. You're 18, you're grown, even though you don't really know that much. Now go try to make it. And you got to get out of here, right? Mm-hmm. So, but when we were in Spain, and my oldest son, he was born, he spent the first year in Spain, and Nicole, she actually did go to work then. She took a job as a substitute teacher. Here and there, yeah, really just to give herself. She took that as a break. It wasn't like it wasn't for the money things. Like, I needed a break. I needed something other than just watching this baby that I don't really know much to do. I don't know much about, because we're so yeah, we didn't know what to do. And my mom was there initially, but then she had to come back to the States. But we got him a Spanish babysitter because a woman who worked at the school, her son went to the same Spanish babysitter as well, and her name was Mama Sante. But the thing that we saw with them is when we would go pick him up, both the daughters were, they said no, the daughters were there, and it's like, well, they're still here, and they said, oh no, they're going to stay here until they get married out, and what we saw was when the girls came home, the mama was in the kitchen when she mopping or sweeping the floor. What did she do? And the girl took the broom out of her mother's hand and started speaking. We're like, what's going on? She said, oh, I'm staying here. When I'm in this house, my mama doesn't do this.
And the son was there too, wasn't he? Yeah.
And then when the father came home, this man sat in the chair. They went and took his shoes off of his feet and started serving him. And they said, he has been out working to provide for us. And they said, this is what we do. This is how we live. And we were like, well, wow, what a concept.
Yeah.
What a concept.
It was an immediate paradigm shift for us.
It just changed our paradigms. Like, oh, you can have, this is what family dynamics look like.
Immediate.
So I want to jump in with that example that you shared. It must have been just earth-shattering to see that in action.
It was.
And to know that this is possible without any force. It was just a known responsibility or duty to the children that we just don't want to see our parents have to work this way or do these things in our household. What a tremendous amount of respect. And I often say that respect is earned. It has to be earned. And I equally enjoy the Spanish culture for some of the things that I've also witnessed because I love the Spanish culture in general. It's just such a generous culture, the way that they come together as a family and provide during the events and bring the food. If you come to someone's home, you never come empty-handed, right? It's such a culture of giving.
Yeah.
So to see that translated in your experience, I too had the opportunity to study in Spain for 1 month when I was in college to learn a second language. And while I was there, I lived with a Spanish family, and I watched La Abuela. She would come in the household or be in the household cooking for the entire family. But I watched her granddaughter constantly check in on her as we were visitors in the home. There was one day that I saw her house not have a family member there to watch over her, make sure that she had everything that she needed, and that we were treating her well as visitors. So I really admire that sort of culture, and I think we have it as well in our families. But there are some things from generation to generation, we do need to break certain cycles. One of them that you guys touched upon earlier, we don't have to parent by force. That's not the best way to parent. And we want that. We want all that we see in other cultures, other households, other communities, and all of that. And we can have that, but we have to find out how to do it in a healthy way and build a healthy dynamic with our family members. So I really appreciate you sharing that story. But everything that you've talked about so far and how you raise your sons, I could only imagine that you two you're seeing the return of the respect that is given unto you.
Yes.
The way that you chose to raise your children. So thanks for that. It just really touched me, and I wanted to speak on it a little bit as well.
I'm going to tell you, Precious, and Nicole would always say, yeah, we're going to have us a nice Black Spanish family.
También.
Yeah, and just to talk a little bit about where our sons are today, because of how they have been raised, we knew one of the things that I marvel at, because we studied them. So by the time they were in middle school, because Tony is a huge advocate in and college recruiting, and that he understands how all of those dynamics work, and picking universities and colleges based on targets, reaches, and safeties, and looking at the propensity of the child and where they will thrive best, and making sure, even if they are a student athlete, that the school that they choose can pass the broken leg test. Like if sports doesn't, you'll be proud of me that I'm remembering all this. That if sports doesn't work out, where can you go and still be fulfilled and have a career that you can be proud of? And so by the time the boys were in middle school, because we actually did rites of passages for both of them when they turned 13, because we believe in the power of speaking into your children. Like there's so much we could talk about, but the power of speaking into your children and speaking into their future, because we know that words are life, and they hold, and because of the position we hold in our children's lives, they look to us and they believe in us. And so we have to be very careful of what we say, even in moments when we are angry, that we not say anything over them or put anything on them that we don't mean. Because yes, you can apologize, but it does not take away the sting and then remembering.
There's no band-aid for that emotional scar.
No, we say sticks and stones may break our backs, but words will never hurt us, and that is an absolute lie. Words carry, and they.
Y'all were breaking back.
Sticks and stones may break my bones.
You said break my back.
Well, and my back. I have bones in my back. But the point is, your words are so important. So Jay, who is the 27-year-old, he is living independently. He's on his own in Pennsylvania. He works for the Department of Justice. He, as Tony said, he got his degree at an Ivy League school, his undergrad. He has a master's degree. Joshua is currently in law school studying entertainment law. And he's
in his final semester in law school at 22 years old.
Yeah, he'll graduate this coming May. And they are good, sound, balanced, integral, God-fearing young men. And the way we determine that is how they were once they were no longer with us. That was the best way. That was the litmus to see if all that we had done, if it had worked. How do you stand when you have all the freedom that you want and you can do whatever you want? How do you stand in those moments? Because that's where real character is developed, right? Not how you act, but how you react. And so we've been that's how we monitored. And so they are both doing very well. They're happy. And we have a wonderful, tight-knit group. We have a group chats. We text each other. We send each other jokes and memes and all that kind of stuff, because we have a loving relationship. We built that over the years. We served them. That's what I like to say. We served our children as they were coming up, and now they desire to serve us. It wasn't anything that was mandated, but it's being reciprocated because we taught them what love means by the actions that we have taken in their lives. You want to stop there?
All right. Well, I want to thank you, Tony and Nicole. We are so lucky to have had you with us. As you post your books up, another opportunity for us to do a book giveaway. So be on the lookout for a book giveaway coming up. I'm going to borrow your definition for expert, since I'm running. That's somebody else. I can tell all of my mentors now you are an expert.
Yes.
They are the somebody else who are you to come to, so that we can really reinforce what's happening in the household. So the Intentional Parenting Online Summit has been put together prior to running our normal program from February through April, which is the Shield Saturday Leadership Academy by design, because we want our parents to really receive all of this information, which is the same content and topics that we go through with our youth, but this is on an adult level, so that we can then reinforce all of the wonderful things that are already happening in the households as we empower and motivate parents. So we are lucky to have Tony and Nicole, who has so graciously agreed to come back for week 4, where we will talk about Vision Your Future. As you can already see, they are loaded with so much advice. So you will be back with us next week, which I'm so excited about. Parents, if there was
Our
any
pleasure.
information that we shared with you today that was useful, don't forget to invite another family to join us in this private Facebook group as we continue to empower and motivate you. This is for 12 weeks, so we still have quite a few more weeks ahead of us to continue this work. In closing, parents, always remember that you are your child's best advocate.
You've invested tons of time into your child, but you don't have to do it alone. Does your 4th through 12th grade child need an outlet to focus on how to reach their highest potential in school, in life, and beyond? Here at the Shield Mentor Program, our college and professional mentors are waiting to serve you through our Shield online community, a place for parents and youth with the same interests to connect in a fun and safe virtual environment. From helpful parenting information to social and emotional support for your child and everything in between, join us to connect with others who live near and far in a much-needed space to get the help your child needs for their future success through our mentorship and leadership programs. It's never been easier for you to connect your child with the resources they need. Join us today at www.shieldmentor.org to connect with like-minded parents looking to see their child succeed.